All right.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
Yo, so welcome to the Synth Society Summit. This is the Modular Synthesis and Hip Hop panel, and I got some really dope guests. But we're going to kick this off with my man Ben, the Glorious Bastard from New York Modular Society, and he's going to do like a 10-minute set, and then we're going to get into this conversation about modular synthesis and hip hop. And all right, go for it, Ben. We're ready for you, bro.
Going back to Cali.
Yeah. Yeah, my man Ben the Glorious Bastard.
Yo, that was dope. That was dope.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So yeah, just to remind folks you tune in to this is the Synth Society Summit, Modular Synthesis and Hip Hop. And yeah, we let's introduce the panel right now. That was Ben the Glorious Bastard on the beats. And we got Ken Flux Pierce on the panel. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
We got Ben the Glorious Bastard. Word. And then we got Ski Beats. What's up, Ski? You there? Is everybody frozen?
I'm good. I can hear you.
Okay, I see. Word. And then we got Upright. What's happening, Upright?
Yo. What up, everybody?
And Ali the Architect.
Yo, what's the word?
It's all good, man. Hey, so Ben, that was a dope set, dope track, and Ali, you did a patch from scratch for us yesterday, so that was dope too, man. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Very dope.
and let's see. I'll pull my mic down just a little bit. So yeah, so listen, this is a topic that all of y'all know it's probably near and dear to all of our hearts, man, because this is modular synthesis, but at the same time it's hip hop, and it's not the conventional sort of situation with blending those two. And so I kind of want to get to the core of what kind of inspired people to start to experiment with modular and just the whole idea of blending the two techniques and blending the two types of music, what kind of barriers we might face. I feel like there's quite a few barriers, but you think through it, you work through it. So first, Ski Beats, I'm glad to have you here, man, because you released Switched On BAP. That Switched On joint was a dope project, and I think what was real dope about it is that it kind of introduced people. As a matter of fact, I was at a synth conference, I think it was KnobCon, and cats had on the Switched On t-shirts, and I was like, yeah, but it was almost like code. You know what I'm saying? It's like a code. So when you see somebody doing that, actually I think Ski may be having some issues. But let's flip over to Upright. So you and Ken kind of started me in the thought of we do hip hop, but we doing modular. What was kind of your first foray into that, and why did you think to start incorporating modular into your production?
Yo, I love this question because for me, what it was is I was doing a lot of sampling of records. You know what I mean? I was sampling records, and when you're sampling records, the mentality is to try to find something that no one has heard before, that is unique, that you can, flip and get something inspiring to create, a dope track, right? And man, I don't know how I got hooked on modular synthesis. I think it was, I started programming just regular synths. And then for some reason I found modular, right? And when I heard the different sounds that modular synths was creating, I was like, man, the variety and just the vastness of tones and sounds you can get from a modular. This is exactly, what I'm looking for on the synthesis side. You know what I mean? So as opposed to trying to find a piece of vinyl with something unique, you can go to modular and create something super unique that no one has ever heard before, and make that a starting point. So that's what kind of got me into it. As far as where I originally heard modular, man, I can't remember exactly, but that was the whole point of getting into modular, was it just to find something unique that was synthesized. And that's what the modular gave me.
Word. And what about you, Ben? Can we hear you yet or no? Oh, we can't hear you yet.
Can't hear me.
Still not working.
No, it's all good. Ski, you back with us?
You're super quiet, man. Super quiet.
Me?
Yeah, just turn up a bit. Oh, Ben, there's Ben. So, Ben, what about you, man? What made you start to dig into modular synthesis and adding that into your hip hop production?
I'm a little bit like upright, you know. I feel like for a few years in my life, you know, I was producing maybe I don't want to sound, you know, but maybe 10 beats a day, you know. I was working, you know, for some guys like Dame Dash, all that, banging beats day and night, you know. And after a few years doing that, I was like, man, what else is left to sample? You know, what can I do now? So yeah, I started. You know, I was already a big synthesizer guy, but you know, playing keys is not exactly the same, right? I never wanted to be like a score storage type of person. You know, I don't have the chops also maybe. So you know, I was kind of questioning what was next, and I gave myself a birthday present. I bought the Zero Coast, and that was pretty much done from there. Ski hooked me up with a Modular 32, actually, very very kind of him. And when I realized, like, yo, like, you know, it sounds cliche, but you know, it's more than the sum of its elements, right? You hear the sound from the Modular 32, you hear the sound of the Zero Coast, you're like, okay, that's cool. But when you start plugging them together, I had that epiphany moment where I was like, oh wow, this is what I want to do with my life now. That's how it started, and then next thing you know, I buy a Mantis case, I buy math, I buy a triple wave shaper. I was done.
No doubt, no doubt. So,
you hear me now, though? Everything's cool?
Yeah, we can hear you. You could be a little louder, but we can still hear you though. Go for it. Go for it. It's good. It's good. Go for it.
Turn me up. Turn me up.
So what about you, Ali? Like what was it? I kind of know your story a bit, but I'm interested for you to kind of let people know how you came about to jumping into modular. And I know it was almost like a fire sale of all other gear when you start getting into modular, right?
Yeah, man. I was just done with the DAW. I was done with plugins, scanning through sounds that other people made, you know, working through these synthesizers that you have to follow the creator's thought process. You know what I mean? You can't stray away from how they plan this machine. So just hearing a whole bunch of stuff and doing some research, like I got the Mother 32, and once I got that Mother 32, it was just like through the rabbit hole for me. From there, like you said, I screwed off compressors, EQs, the recording booth, keyboards, everything. It was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So that's kind of how I got into it. It was just like being tired of scanning through presets that other people made, you know. And I tried making presets myself, but it just sucks using keyboard and mouse to try to turn knobs and stuff, you know.
Well, the other thing too about presets or fixed architecture synthesizers, like I love them. Obviously, they all behind me. I have my modular on this side, but the idea about fixed architecture synthesizers is that you do still have to kind of follow the engineer's lead. Whoever designed that thing pre-patched everything. You know what I'm saying? And you're not changing that. You could do some things, the things that they allow you to do, but it's not like you're gonna be unpatching and patching and doing a bunch of stuff. So I think that all of us kind of have that similar trajectory of like just kind of moving past. And I can remember seeing Ski like dig deep into the modular, and it's almost like we watched Switch on BAP being made online.
No joke. Yep.
And so what was that process like for you, Ski?
Well, first I want to say, BboyTech is definitely one of my main inspirations. I used to watch your page.
I appreciate that, bro.
No problem. Like, what is this kid doing with all these wires? What the fuck is this shit? What's going on?
Right.
Doing this like hip hop beat with these, these electronic sounds, and I'm like, yo, this is kind of amazing. So I kind of, I went down to Mother 32. No, I'm sorry, the what's that shit called? The little Moog joint. What is it called?
Yeah, that's Mother 32.
I went down to Mother 32 rabbit hole. Then Ben came by the crib and he had the Zero Coast. My boys. When I heard that thing, I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of crazy. So I got one, and then next thing you know, I got a fucking rack, and it was over after that, kid.
That's dope. That's dope. That's dope.
I was locked in after that. And then, start, you know, using my, I guess my hip hop sensibility with the drums and stuff, and I always wanted to figure out, you know, I was trying to connect it because I know the MIDI and the syncing was kind of different with it, so I was trying to figure out a way, you know, just to make it move how I wanted to move. Because you know, with modular,
Yeah.
Now, 10, most of the
No, we
shit is locked
losing.
to a grid.
Yeah, you breaking up, man.
Yeah, I think I get where you're going though. Well, you were saying like with trying to make it move like it's moved because you are breaking up, but you were saying like everything locked into a grid. But with hip hop, you need a certain feel, and you got to figure out how to make that happen with including the modular stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that.
And I was making an album and not knowing I was making an album. You know what I mean? I was just and next thing you know, I'm like, you know what? This sounds like a fucking body of work. Let's put it out. And it took me a minute to come up with a cool name. I was always a fan of the Switched On Back album cover. You know, I was like, what the fuck is this guy's behind? What is this thing? I said, yo, Switched On Back. Bap, switched on. Why? It made all the sense in the world to me.
Right.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It all made sense. And I think too, and what I love about it is that, you know, it pushes this whole movement in a way that what I found is when I'm doing what I'm doing, and all of us on here, I think that has it's influencing people around to say, like, you could use your hip hop sensibilities and everything you know about hip hop and that you've been doing with making hip hop, but you can push the envelope a little bit and kind of color outside of the lines with these wires and stuff, and with this modular stuff. And then now people are starting to kind of see that. So that's why what I was saying when I was at NobCon and I saw some cats with Switched On BAP shirts on, I was like, yo, and they was like, yo. You know what I mean? It's like we knew already. Like, you know what I mean? But I want to swing back around too, because Ken is one of the guys, like Ken and Upright. They're the guys in the squad that already had modular, and I was avoiding that shit like the plague at first. I was just kind of like, nah, bro, I'm not going down that. I'm not. You know what I mean? Because I knew it was a money pit. You know what I'm saying? And so, Ken, how'd you start to get to a point where you wanted to incorporate modular into your production?
Hip hop was like, it was the hip hop first, and then it was the modular, because it was record digging is what did it for me. You know what I mean? Like, I love record digging. Like, it's, to me, I would say that record digging is in like my top 3 aspects of hip hop, period. Like, just because I like, there's something about it, especially if you're a music producer, like not as much for the MCs, but more for the producers, where we like community, but stay the hell away from me. Right. So like, I like to, I love my community. I love my community, but I also really like to just be creative in my own world, right? And record digging is like this thing where it's like you can be digging with your best friend side by side and not really say a word for hours on end, but like the community's there, but you're digging and you're focused, and you know, so like it's like parallel play. It's like y'all are all kind of going towards the same goal, but you're focused on your singular end and kind of doing your thing. So I used to always try to get weird sounds that other people didn't use. Like, I come from the school of like, don't bite. And for me, it was always about like, yo, let me get like a sound that somebody else isn't going to use. And I found myself always sampling like these weird records, you know, like he said, Switched On Bach, Switched On Mozart. I started finding Buchla records, you know, Morton Subotnick. Stuff like that, and man, those records are just so out there and like just didn't sound like anything else. And a lot of the stuff, what's really cool is on those records, not only would they tell you, like, as record diggers, we would look at the session players and the studios. So we'd be, you know, digging, and you'd be like, okay, well, this guy played on this album and this guy played on that album, and it was all recorded here, so it has this kind of sound to it, you know. And we would get into that. but then they would also list what instruments they were playing, right? Because back in the day, that was also part of their advertisement scheme. Like when ARP would come out with a new synthesizer, they would have the session musicians list what synthesizer they were playing on each record, right? So you could start looking at the records and you start to see like these weird synthesizer names popping up more and more often, and you'd be like, I recognize what that is. Oh, there's a 2600 on this. What's that all about, right?
Yeah, then that turns out to start inspiring what kind of gear you might want to use. And
it was all pipe dreams. It was all like,
Yeah.
like there's no way in the world I'd be able to afford something like that. And my dad was like I come from a long line of nerds, right? So like my dad was into ham radio and his dad was into ham radio. Like I come from a long line of nerds, and I grew up with like computers and like weird cables around and that sort of thing, but it was all different types of things, but it all made like these weird sounds, right? Because like when you would turn the dials, you hear the heterodyning, which is that weird whew sound like on the dials. So you know, as I got older and I started understanding, like, okay, there's like these Moog synthesizers, these Buchla synthesizers. I never thought any day that I'd be able to afford one. And Eurorack came around, and I'd kind of been watching it, like, off to the side, like, oh, that's really cool, but I can't afford it. I'm a cheap bastard. I'll be the first person to tell you.
With that big-ass rig behind you.
Well, hold on. There's a point to that. But, like, I can remember having the conversation with St. Joe from soundsandgear.com. He's one of my best friends, and we've known each other for decades now. And so I remember having the conversation with Joe, and I used to always talk about modular, and I was like, man, if I ever won the lottery, like, I'd have a modular synthesizer. I'd have this big system, blah blah blah. And he always answers the same way. Do it. Like, he would just always say that to me. Like, he'd just be like, do it, man. Just do it. Make that happen. Like, Joe is a super inspirational person in my life, and he's just very he doesn't take any kind of like half-assery. Like if you have something
execute.
Yeah, he's all about execution and making things happen and positivity. And so like we would talk about it, and he just kept saying like, do it. And so one day I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do it. So I went, and there was no information out there, especially for anybody in hip hop. There was no information for like getting a case or getting power. And I started like researching the forums and all that, and they were pretty standoffish, to be honest with you. There was a couple of people that were like receptive to trying to teach somebody on the outside, but it was almost
the truth be told, Ken, I still get some of that standoffishness. I mean,
yeah.
The synth community is very open and friendly and willing to share, but I still do, like, it's almost like the moment you mention an NPC, then all of a sudden they feel like there's an idiot in the room.
Go get a turntable module.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, it was this thing where it was like there was this, aside from just snobbery, there was very much this barrier to entry that they felt like everybody had to go through and cut their teeth on. And when I first got involved, that was like the first thing I did was, oh, my son's running in. The first thing I did was like to document what was happening. So like if you go on fluxwithit.com, you'll see like my early system. So Dad, and hold on, buddy.
Daddy, where's your little work toy?
My new work toy is right here. I got a Sensormorph, and he wants to play with it. So yeah, man, it was this thing where like I documented it and I kind of put it out there for other people to learn from as quickly as possible, so that I could get other people involved who wouldn't normally have access to this kind of stuff, because like I had to do a lot of legwork, and even some of the people that were helpful would have good days and bad days, where like one day they'd be like, yeah, I'll help this guy, and other days they'd be like, I'm not talking to this dude. Like,
so ultimately, I think one of the things that I think that was dope with you, Ken, is that you went and you cultivated, you like found the information, dug it up, and then shared it with folks. You know what I mean? Like, Ken basically wrote an ebook that he called an article, and it was, you know, basically this incredible documentation of Eurorack stuff. But you know what I wanted to get to is, and this kind of relates back to digging for records, and then with me realizing what I was looking for was what I could make. You know what I mean? Digging for records, and I stumbled upon Mort Garzon, and Mort Garzon is like one of the early electronic music composers, and he has some incredible music, yo. And I was sampling that stuff and flipping it and chopping it and stuff. But then I was realizing, I was like, then I'd listen to, what some of my other guys were doing with Eurorack. And that's when I decided, you know what, I could do that stuff. I could make that stuff myself and still sample, chop it, and flip it the same way.
Word.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of what started me down that path. And but then it's all of these challenges. I don't know, what would you all say some of the challenges are when it comes to blend and modular synthesis and whatever you make hip hop on?
Linking your instrument of choice to the modular. Like for me, I have to figure out how I'm going to link my MPC up, because I know my MPC and that's my helm, and I wanted to keep it that way, So finding the information about going CV to MIDI was key for me.
That's
CV was key.
Yo, you know what I was thinking, and I kind of want to address Ski with this too, is man, the barrier, because when you first look at a modular synth, you're like, man, how do I even get started on this? You know what I mean? Like, where do I even, how do I learn about this joint, right? So it's like that barrier to getting into it is like, do you guys, looking back in hindsight, like, what, Ski, was it that hard? Like, was it that difficult? Because when you look at it, you're like, man, all these wires, all this craziness, man, where do I start? In hindsight, like, was it that crazy? Like, you know what I mean?
As crazy as it looked.
Yeah, exactly.
I was intimidated. I'm not gonna front. I didn't know which module to get first. I didn't know, like you said, I didn't know how to begin. But once I got the basic setup, oscillator, VCA, envelope, you know what I'm saying? Just some basic things,
right?
And then of course, you're gonna buy modules that you don't ever use. You're gonna do some dumb shit. But once you go to the stage, you kind of get it. But yeah, definitely. The initial stage for me, man, that learning curve was just trying to figure out what I wanted to get.
Power and case, dude. Power and case was the number one thing for me when I saw when I was first getting started. Again, and also getting back to just being like not having a lot of money. Like, you got to have a case and a power supply before you could even make a sound, and that's like.
And that's the boring shit too.
And,
though,
and
right?
back then, cases and
yo.
power were more expensive back then too.
And then I'm trying to figure out, damn, like, because I'm a pretty handy guy. I'm like, damn, do I build my own case or do I buy one? Like,
I want to do the same.
You know what I mean? So, but I see this question from Bill. He's saying, do you think the move in the modular is part of the general move away from the golden era sample-based hip hop? Is modular the new Triton? I think so. That's what really drove me into it, because I don't want to use samples where I gotta pay somebody else. I can't use it. I made this tight ass beat, but I can't do nothing with it.
Hey, Ali,
clearance.
I gotta say this though. Here's why it's not, and here's a major aspect of it, because I hated the Triton era sample beats, right? Like, I really hated that stuff. And like you give me like a no ID beat or a Swizz beat, and like I'm going no ID every time. Like, so, but there's a major difference between the two, right? As far as the Triton versus modular. Modular, you're creating your own sounds from scratch.
Right.
The Triton was all presets. Like, yeah, there's some synthesis engine in there, but let's be real. If you were using a Triton, you were using presets. To me, the modular is the antithesis of that. Like, it is complete opposite. It is all about you being able to express yourself in a much more intimate way with gear. Now, granted, it's not music that was already there, and you're not just flipping that. But when I'm flipping samples on my modular, to quote Beat Street, we're alive. Like, this is, this is that.
I mean, I feel what you're saying, Kim, but for me, it is. You know what I mean? For other people, it may not be, but for me, this is the new Like I don't feel like I ever need to buy a motif or a Triton or some type of.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. As a sound source and a place to pull sounds from. Let me tell you what my perspective is on this question. Is it a move away from the golden era sample based hip hop? For me, I'm using all of the same sensibilities that I learned in making golden era hip hop and making modbap.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's this huge palette. And I've said a million times, and you guys have probably heard me say it, like everything is vinyl to me. I don't care what it is. All that, if it make a sound, I'm doing it like I do vinyl. You know what I'm saying? So you know, I find myself constantly trying to emulate that stuff. And you probably seen me perform at this point where, you know, even when I start, everything is going through, you know, I got my Eurorack going through the Force and the Force going through the SB404, and I start my sets off with the vinyl sim, and you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to emulate that thing to kind of bring that sort of sensibility back, and then you're gonna start to hear the drums come in that kind of smack. I kind of feel like, maybe it's not the golden era, but everything about the golden era informs how I approach.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Actually, that's something I kind of do. I have sessions, you know, I go off the grid, off the keys. I don't even tune the oscillators, vibe out for like 2, 3, 4 hours, you know, and then get back to it. And I look at it like a stack of records, you know, and I'm like, whack, good, whack, okay, amazing, you know. And sometimes, you know, I pitch down -10, +10, whatever, you know, and I end up with something. I'm like, oh wow! I felt like I was sampling, you know, Martin Subotnick or somebody like that, you know.
And the sequencers is another thing where it's like, it's almost like when I'm doing sequencers, or especially if I make a generative patch and that sort of thing, it's almost like I'm sampling somebody else. Like, it's like, okay, I'm putting this together and it's my synthesis inspiration, but I let it run, and then I'm sampling all these snippets of it and all these movements of it. It's like a stack of records. So to me, it's less like a preset, you know, workstation thing. It's, hey, I don't get banged for copyright, but I still feel like I'm record digging when I'm sampling my own stuff, and that's the whole point of it for me.
For me, you know what? I got into modular, like I sampled a whole lot of stuff. I probably have like 300 samples from like my first year and a half of modular, right? I just still haven't touched it because I haven't taken my MPC by itself somewhere and you know, needed to make music. But what I have done is I made it a part of my workflow now. So instead of sampling it right now and saving it for later, I'll do it right there. I'll make a little thing, sample it into the Magneto, then I'll go take that and make a beat right then and there out of it. You know what I mean? So I'm still doing that same kind of workflow.
I think a lot of that also has to do with who is not lazy when you're labeling and cataloging your samples, though. Like, honestly, I've got
labeling and cataloging samples.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I've got literally like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of samples, like, from like each weekend. But like, I don't catalog them properly, so I'm not going back and digging through them. I'm making new stuff each time. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, so I got a quick question for everybody. Mainly, man, I keep coming back to Ski because he's a legend on the beat. You know what I mean? So, but yo, this is basically for everybody. Like, so when it comes to modular, like, I know a lot of it is hands-on, and like for me, sometimes you get it almost like a patch is like spiritual. You're like, you got your hands on it, you're crafting it and shaping it right as you do your thing. But like, so where's the starting point for modular for you guys? Do you start with the melody? Do you start with the modular as far as modular hip hop, or do you start with the beat? You know what I mean? And that whole syncing all that together, like, does it start with the modular or does it start with the drums? You know what I mean?
Man, both. With me, usually 9 times out of 10 is going to be the melody. I'll use a basic saw wave and just create a melody with that, and then I'll start shaping the sound.
Oh, snap! Dope.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know what? I'm either way. It depends on what it is for me. It can really depend. It's tough for me to answer that, but I will say what I end up doing is using a mixture of both. Sometimes I start with the beat, sometimes I start with the melody, and then I have to also clarify, I don't always sample and chop. the stuff. I do, but then sometimes it's just a matter of creating this melody and modulating the crap out of it, filtering the crap out of it, and seeing how different I could make this melody sound within a stretch of 24 bars. And then I might capture that 24 bars and do like the homie used to show me how to do on the old MPCs, where he would put the sample on several different pads and then change the start point. You know what I mean? And then that would be how he would kind of progress through the chops. And so I kind of do that kind of stuff where I might capture, like I said, 24 bars of something and just change the start point. Or just, if it's 24 bars, I might use the first 4 bars for this, the next 8 bars for that, the last few bars for this and that and the other, and kind of move around. I guess it's kind of like a pseudo way of chopping, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I like short. I like a little bit shorter sections, but I'll keep like kind of the same thing going. Like take like 8 bars, 8 bars, 8 bars, and I'll do variations of each one so that they all kind of fit together, and then kind of do it that way. Yeah.
You guys usually lock stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you.
We all started at the same time.
I work with a drummer. Shout out to B-Scale. He sends sounds to many people. And what I like is like you take a break beat, like not something you heard a billion times, but like a fresh original made by a drummer, and kind of just bounce off of it. Trying to get the BPM going, and then set the delay, whatever. But I think it's almost like an exercise, and it leads, great results, starting with a groove, and trying to emulate the groove, follow it, follow that organic, feel with the modular.
Yeah.
Are any of you making your drums in it?
Sometimes, right? I'll start with drums, then I'll go to my rig and make a melody, and then scrap the drums and make the new ones. You know what I mean?
That's more what I do. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think we all do that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
This one has a good question in the comments. So, do you all synthesize drums on the modular, then sample and track them? I guess I can start answering myself. I'm gonna say no. I felt like synthesized drums is a major financial investment. So I'm a bounced off. What Ken said. Like, man, I don't feel I can commit to such financial, endeavor. At the end of the day, I have the MPC, billions of sounds on an SD card.
Right.
I have a hard time forking out a couple of grands, just to do the same thing, kind of ish.
That's my issue with it. And, I have Black Noir, right? And it's kind of hard for me to get any other drum modules because it sounds the same. You know what I mean? Now you get it sounding different. You could get it knocking different ways, but it's only so far you can push it. So
yeah, I just want to show what I had loaded up on it. So I go. So when I sound design, right, and when I make my own drums, I oftentimes am layering. Like, I love breakbeats more than anything. Like, breakbeats to me are hip hop. Period. Like, you don't do hip hop without a breakbeat. And so what I always like to do, though, is I like to layer analog drums with breakbeats, right? So on the right-hand side there, you'll see I have my analog for the most part. There's some digital modules in there, but my analog drum machine, modular is on the right. And then to the left, I got the ER301, and I use that for sample drums, right? And I'll just show you this real quick. This is super quick. But I can take a drum break, right? And can you hear that?
Nope.
No? Oh, I guess I should probably turn it up then, right? Maybe, like this. You should be able to hear this. Can you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that coming through direct, do you think?
No,
it don't sound like it.
Okay, hold on. I'll do it like this.
Daddy Riley.
It should have been. But anyway, point being is I can use the modular to chop up my samples in ways that I would not do on my MP, and do things like sample rate reduction by hand and whatnot that I wouldn't normally do. So like, so I can actually mangle my drums live using my modular sequencers and my ER301 and that sort of thing. So I had both sample drums and analog drums in my modular.
So yeah, and I think for me the kind of thing when it comes to drums and modular, I'm kind of half and half because as a sound designer, I'm designing drums. So I have drum modules, and then like what I end up doing is creating packs that I sell and use myself. But the thing is, I can honestly say nothing's more hip hop than that kind of found sound, break beat. You know what I'm saying? Off of records. And I think when it comes to this idea of modbap, like the idea of keeping that hip hop as hell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And bringing everything else in out of the modular, it's probably the purest of the fusion. You know what I mean? And I honestly feel like it keeps it from sounding non-hip hop when you go with the like D Still always says, if you made dope hip hop, you can make dope modbap because you pulling from that same bag of tricks. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think that's kind of one of the things with me. But you know, I will go down there. I mean, my first sample pack that I created for beatpeople.com was analog boom bap, and the whole idea behind that was analog drums layered with, you know, drum, like real acoustic drums that you might sample and find, and it's a matter of the sound design and stuff like that. Here's the other thing about this, right? There's a lot of frequencies around there. We all have become frequency wranglers, and it's a matter of coloring the sound and kind of bringing that stuff into this hip hop realm. Like, what are some of the things that you all do to color the sound? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the Zulu, and we talk about a million other different things that kind of we take modular and bring it into our MPCs or into our DAWs, and we kind of color the sound. What are some of the things you all are doing to color the sound to bring it back down to that hip hop place?
So if you don't mind, just before we move on, I would like Ski to answer the previous question because I think he's the only person I've ever seen that really blends both technique. He actually uses drums in Eurorack with drums in the MPC. Ski, could you explain a little bit if you don't mind?
Yeah, go for it.
You just broke it down, baby. I mean, I use drums in Eurorack and I use drums for my MPC. I mean, I definitely prefer my MPC drums because, you know, I'm like all you guys. I got thousands of, you know, samples and sample packs. I enjoy that, you know, that authentic hip hop sound. But sometimes I catch like some cool sounds with my, you know, my modular gear too. Like I got the what's that thing called?
The WMD Chimera or something like that.
Chimera, yeah, and a Crater. That Crater be
right.
Chimera and Crater and all the WMD drums are crazy, quite frankly.
But I like to, I mean, just to add on to the next question, I like to color my sounds. I like to use, like, you know, the module, the lo-fi junkie. I think that's kind of cool. I like to use a lot of white noise blended with my FM, you know? I like to blend
dope.
To make the sounds more hairy?
Yeah, it makes it real crunchy. You know, makes it real crunchy. And I like to add white to my filters, you know, things like that, just to get a dirty sound.
Man, I saw that SP404 on your desk. Are you using that? Are you running the modular through that, or you just is that something separate? Oh snap! Okay, yeah. Okay.
He drops the gem, right, sits back and says, "Yeah."
That's what's up right there. Yeah. Okay. Man,
I just built like a little vinyl rack, man. I got like the what? I got the Woggle Bug, I got the Morphogene, I got the Q-Pass, I got the Mimeophone, the X-Pan, a lo-fi junkie. But I'm using my vinyl. I'm sampling vinyl into that, and then I'm resampling MPC. But I'm getting like the crazy ass textures, you know.
That's one of the cool things about modular is sending things like you're not limited to send. So if you have something that's like a Logic, like a switch or whatever, you're not limited to using it most of the time as just a switch. You can throw audio through them. Like like I have the triple exclusive OR, which is like it's an OR logic switch, but I'll throw audio into that thing and you get these crunchy sounds out of it. I build my own sample rate reduction units inside of there, like, and I'm not even talking with the ER301, which is basically a computer in a modular, but I'm talking like, you know, using quantizers, using sample and hold, that kind of thing as audio processing units so that you can do your own bit rate reduction, your own sample rate reduction, all that kind of stuff. So you can get like vintage sampler sounds on the fly and then tweak them past that. You know what I mean? You can get as crunchy as you want. You can get crunchy to the point where it just all falls apart.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I like. I don't like I don't like the high end. I don't like high end on my sounds. I like all my sounds kind of dull. And low-fi sounds.
Yeah, I feel you.
Modbap, you feel me?
Yeah, and that's what kind of brings it back down to earth. You know what I mean? Like on the real, it kind of brings it back down to earth, and you know it when you hear it. You know what I'm saying? It's familiar that way. You know what I mean?
I see.
Yeah, that's what
his whole lineup is WMD through their compressors. Like that's if I was to get drums, it would be WMD and SSF. I think those are the ones that I have my eyes on.
For sure.
The other thing is making your own too, you know, just the fact that like, because you have raw modules, like making your own drums out of individual elements is dope. Like, you know, and especially if you're sampling up your sounds, like I like to create my own drums and my own percussion, and then I'll sample it into my MPC.
Yeah, behind you though, you have the space and ability to do that. Like for us with like smaller rigs.
No, that's exactly it. That's exactly my point, is that with a smaller rig, like you have an oscillator, a filter, and a couple of envelopes, and you can make a ton of dope drums and a noise source, and you can make a ton of dope drums, and then you just sample them into your sampler, and you're good to go.
For me though, I would be using all of that stuff for like my melodies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's the rich boy. That's the rich boy way. That's the rich boy way. See, I'm talking about like using each individual module because that's all you have. Because for the long, like this is years and years of building.
I was Ali on this one.
Yeah, I'm with Ali, man. I'm more of a melody guy.
I started off with 3 modules, and that was it. And I had 3 modules for like 2 years. So, you know, I used the crap. You start learning how to use like a filter as a slew and stuff like that. Like you got to find ways to bend around things when you don't have the money to buy a whole bunch of modules.
Let me also ask you guys this. I'm curious now about like, okay, I feel like it's a thing now. This thing that we all do is a thing now. There's people that are trying to find out how to do it and they want to do it. And then I think that next frontier is, you know, do people that you end up producing, and this may be for those who have been producing on, you know, records that have, you know, been hits and stuff. The people that you're producing, are they warming up to this kind of thing, or do they even care? A dope beat is a dope beat. Like that's kind of what I want to know. Like in general.
I think no one cares, honestly. The same way, you know, the audience doesn't care how you do it, you know.
If it makes a move, it makes a move.
Say, you know, oh, I did that beat using that turn oscillator, yada yada. Like, you know, if it's whack, it's whack. It's good, it's good. You know, if you use a pen on the garbage can, you know, it sounds hot. Who cares, you know? I tried to show guys in the studio a couple of times, like, yo, look, I put like a 25 effect chain on your shit, blah, blah, for the lead, and they look at you, like, all right, bro, it sounds good, you know, like, that's it.
They don't care.
Right. Or is it ready for me to jump on?
Yeah, exactly. It's just
right.
You know, it's only, you know. To circle back real quick.
Yep.
I just want to say something real quick. You mentioned the Zulu, Corey.
Yeah.
I think that's a dope device. Langston, who's doing it, very great guy. So, you know, I was happy to give him a shout out. If you never heard of it, the guy built on his own a tape simulator, hardware tape simulator. The guy was an engineer. He started from scratch, no money, no nothing, you know, no big names or anything. And the guy, you know, built his own brand, his own devices. So I think he deserves a big shout out. Langston Mazingale, Handsome Audio.
You have the Zulu. You have the Zulu, Ben. You have the Zulu as well.
I think one is on its way, I guess. But Ski has one.
Oh, word. Ski, you got a Zulu, huh, Ski? Okay, dope. Yeah, I'm that joint is dope.
Yeah, the Zulu is one of those things, man. I think when you talk about like all those sort of sensibilities of the way people have done hip hop for years and the type of processing that people have done, I think the Zulu is one of those devices that allows us to continue to do that in like non-conventional ways without all of the stuff that goes with. I went and bought a real tape machine, man, and the idea, it's just like buying vintage anything. The idea of maintaining all this stuff and you know what I mean, just the stability and I can tell you, I honestly feel like when it comes to a tape machine, those things are more noisy than I want them to be, even with the magic stuff that it imparts. But the Zulu gives you just the magic part. You know what I'm saying?
Word. Yeah.
Yeah, check that Zulu out.
My Mars go through my little 2-inch, well, not 2-inch, cathode tape.
We can barely hear you, Ski.
I said I've been running my module.
Now we hear you.
I love that he got louder and then his internet just took a dump. He was trying to mock me. And the internet gods were like, no.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Listen, we're doing better than Terry Riley and Babyface right now, so don't feel
Yeah,
bad.
you're damn sure doing better than that. And I'll talk to you guys later about whose idea was that anyway, Babyface against Teddy Riley. But anyway.
Hey, Corey, I got a question for the panel that I want to talk about, and that's clocking, right? So sequencers and clocking.
Good question. Good question.
This is something that hip hop guys especially, we all kind of struggle with non-quantized, non-stiff sounds, and modular for the most part has been very much like on the, I mean, if you look at like analog sequencers and everything, it's all about being on the grid and all that kind of stuff. How are you guys clocking, sequencing,
16 steps,
breaking it out?
MPCs.
Yeah,
That's it.
so
It's an MPC.
So at first, me personally, my first try was I was having the MPC sync the BeatStep Pro, and then from the BeatStep Pro, I would try to play with the modular, but the BeatStep Pro was kind of like, it would take like a couple of bars to lock in perfectly. I would see the BPM on the screen kind of fluctuates a little bit. And I'm gonna have to give Ski more props. He put me on the Mutant Brain, and from there I was done. Like every person who has any drum machine, whatever, as the brain of their or whatever they do, I say buy a Mutant Brain. The best thing I ever found.
Yep, Mutant Brain is the best. I mean, you can't get.
I agree with that.
I don't think personally there's a better MIDI to CV interface out there. I mean,
except Ableton.
I was about to say.
It doesn't fit in the rock.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm running everything from Ableton, so I'm using CV tools. Yeah, so yeah. I'm completely off the grid if I need to be. You know what I mean? So yeah,
CV tools is amazing, right?
Yeah, it is. It's incredible, man.
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm all about CV tools, man. All that stuff in there. Yep.
Are any of you using like gate delays and doing anything like that inside the modular? And then clocking modules like Pam's new workout, clock dividers, all this different stuff?
Yeah.
There's a very underrated module. I'm sorry if I cut anybody. The Malico Quad gate delay. Very cheap module. Lots of people bought it and sell it. So, if you're a little patient, you can get it for like $100 or less on Craigslist or whatever. It's amazing. Like, it takes a couple of bars to lock in. It's a little finicky, but nothing does it. And that's game changer. That brings the funk. You see what I mean? It brings the funk immediately.
I think that's one of the things that when you talk about modular integration with hip hop and beat making and that kind of stuff, clocking and being able to create swing and the gate delays and those lazy beats and late snares or late kicks or whatever it might be, you got to find a way to do gate delays. You got to find a way to get swing in there because so much of hip hop is funk. You know what I'm saying? And that human feel. And I think that's like one of the biggest sort of challenges once you kind of get into this space? You got to figure out how to do that with this. You know what I'm saying?
I use slop on Pam's new workout, and that usually gets me where I need to be. It gives it enough funkiness where it's like, all right, this is kind of what I need to be. This first one is not the same as the next one. So if you got four snares going on a 4-bar loop, right? Pam is going to push this one back a little bit, this one forward a little bit.
Yeah, that's human. That's that. Yeah, and then I also want to also say too, a common misconception about what we're speaking of is that we're speaking of swing now, but that ain't necessarily swing. Humanizing things is different than the swing of things. Absolutely. And they're not mutually exclusive, right. And they are challenges that you meet when you're coming to integrate the two. Swing is doing everything. You don't want everything hit off inside.
And it's doing everything consistently, right?
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of the times I'll throw at least one clock out to my trigger riot, right? And this is where we get into the expensive stuff, to be honest with you. But like I'll have trigger riot, and that's just for randomization and pushing and pulling things, and then I can send off to different envelopes and have that pushing and pulling stuff as well, right? But at the end of the day, like, Mutant Brain, Animodule has one called the MIDI gate. There's the shuttle control. There's lots of different interfaces that'll let you get multiple channels of MIDI out into your modular. And at the end of the day, I still do like that a lot. And I'll use things like BeatStep Pro, KeyStep Pro, those sorts of things to send more kind of traditional stuff. But then I'll add randomization, probability, pushing and pulling inside the modular through various unconventional means, like that.
And I was going to say real quick. Oh, no, go ahead, Ben.
Okay, so I have a quick cheap trick, for everybody who's listening out there who's like, yo, I'm broke, I don't have much module, but I want to bring the funk down. I started doing that with just, if you have a envelope generator with EOC, you gate, and EOC means end of cycle for those who don't know. And then, so it means your gate is going to come out a little later. And then, if, for example, you have mass or, maybe a cheaper envelope setting, you can automate the rise or the fall or both at the same time. Yeah, and that's it.
I do that all the time. I love it.
Funkiness,
Yeah, that's
right. That's a way cheaper way to achieve, proper groove, I would say, and proper, funkiness, nothing insane.
Absolutely.
To create that groove and movement.
I send a sample and hold.
Any fancy module.
I'll send a sample and hold that's clocked from my beat, right, into that goes to the sample and hold, and then from the sample and hold into like my attack time, and that, oh man, you can get that push pull, and it'll be syncopated in time. That and
exactly.
What's that other one? The STD. The syncopated time disruptor.
Actually, that's a slept-on modules, STD, and it's not very expensive either. It's on point for that kind of stuff.
The name, I think the name made did a disservice.
Jesse Animodule is an awesome dude. He likes to play with the names of things. So
even in his description, he even wrote it like, "Yo, this is gonna be something. Everybody's gonna catch it and get it and love it and all this." Cause I'm like, man, yo, you wildin'.
I helped co-design with that. I helped co-design with that, and the original idea was like we wanted to do tap tempo that could syncopate, and then it kind of spiraled out of control. And I love it though, like his punk rock idea with it.
So real quick, just to touch on the whole humanization versus swing, like I think
then we're gonna wrap it up after that.
I think swing is, like you said, everything, right? It everything swings. Humanization is the ability to put something exactly where you want it on that grid. And that's what I could get through Ableton. Like I'm not, like I can put anything anywhere, whereas swing moves everything. So I just wanted to Just wanted to say that. But yeah.
So, yo, I want to thank everybody for joining this discussion. You know, I feel like every time we have any kind of discussion like this, we could go much longer and sort of get people involved and give more, you know, drop more jewels and stuff. But yo, I want to thank, you know, Ski, Upright, Ken, Ben the Glorious Bastard, Ali, and everybody for coming through to have this conversation. Thanks to SoCal Synth Society and the Synth Society Summit for doing this event. And for those of you that are in the chat, go ahead and jump on over to the next panel, which is getting started in modular, which we started to touch on a little bit in here, and they should be started right now because we're running a little late. So hop over and we'll see you next go round. Thanks, everybody.
Yo, peace, everybody.
Thank you
Peace.
so much.
Woo.